Let's kind of talk about the game here, Corbin. I'll throw this over to you, man. I guess when you start on the offensive side of the football here, brand new quarterback, brand new offensive coordinator, a lot of new skill players. What were kind of some of your impressions from what we saw from Dillon Gabriel? We'll stick with quarterbacks for right now.
Yeah, I thought he seemed poised. As Adam mentioned, I think on last week's pod, this is the biggest crowd Dillon Gabriel's ever played in, and it's a spring game. And so I think all those things considered, you've got a historic, Heisman Trophy winning quarterback coming back. The legacy of being a quarterback in Oklahoma, all of those things have to come into play, regardless of how composed and casual you are. I would give him like a B-. I thought he had some really good throws. I think the two biggest takeaways for me is the tempo that Coach Levy is going to play with will help the inefficiencies that I think Gabriel has. I think it'll help hide some of that stuff. I think that'll be very important. But one thing that was also very obvious is if Dillon Gabriel goes down, this team is in significant trouble. And so I know Adam's guy, number 2 on the roster, Micah
Number
Bowens, has a dime, but I'm not buying that quite yet. But I think Dillon Gabriel can be good enough for OU to win this conference. Is he good enough to lead this team into a playoff victory or like a national championship run? I'm not quite there yet, but I think overall first impressions, it was good, but definitely room to be, to see some improvement.
Don't get used to looking at the replays on the video board, because I got caught several times looking up, watching a replay, and then a play had already happened on the field in front of me.
Yes.
The pace of this offense was insane, and it really was only under Dillon Gabriel, which is awesome. That tells you, hey, maybe he's ready to lead this team a little bit faster than we thought, just knowing the system. It is interesting with the red team, he was 10 of 13. With the white team, he was only 9 of 15. So we'll do a deep dive on what that means.
Mims and Weiss on the red team. So that
may
answer
helps.
that.
That helps. But then you look behind him and pretty much nobody got any type of showcase. Ralph Rucker was the next closest with 9 total passes. Nick Evers basically didn't get much of a chance at all. Dropped back 5 times, sacked 4 times, and then the other was an incompletion. So there wasn't much of an opportunity for any of the other guys to get a rhythm there.
Can Jackson Arnold reclassify to 2022? Is it
Do you think
too late for that?
I assume he's better.
Know. Well, I don't want to put.
Today.
I think that's probably a safe bet. And again, I don't want this to turn into a podcast where we're blasting Nick Evers, a true freshman. But I mean, you could tell from the get go it was a little too quick for him. It wasn't really able to keep up, go through his progressions in time. Speed of the game was a little bit too much for him. But he's a true freshman. He's still supposed to be in high school right now, so he's going to grow. Things are going to slow down for him over time. When talking about Dillon Gabriel, the first thing that I thought about when looking at the stat sheet, 28 attempts. How often is it that you see a quarterback playing for both teams, or how common is it that you see a guy attempting close to 30 passes? And guys, let's not forget, this guy hasn't played a meaningful live rep of football dating all the way back to the first month of last season. He spent most of last year hurt with a broken collarbone. So I think that was definitely very intentional by Venables and Jeff Lebby to get him back out there, get him some more experience. Like you said, Corbin, in front of 75,000 fans. Even going on the road in Big 12 games this season, you're not going to play in front of 75,000 fans. Honestly, I don't think anywhere. So very good outing for him. Honestly, some of the big takeaways from him, it's kind of hard to throw when the wind's blowing 30 miles an hour, but you can definitely tell watching him throw the football. He's got some zip on it. He's definitely got a live arm coming out of his hands.
Too much zip sometimes.
Too much. Yeah. Turn that 98 mile an hour fastball. Let's dial that back a little bit. But no, and then also I think my favorite play of the day that he made, we knew that he was an athletic guy. He's got some mobility to him, but it was right there on that very first series where the play kind of broke down. He scrambled outside the pocket to his left and was able to make that big time throw to Theo Weiss, which set him up at the 1 yard line. So it's a spring game. Things are going to look a lot different in the fall. I mean, hell, Kyler Murray was downright awful in his spring game, and 8 months later, he's holding the Heisman Trophy. So, guys, I guess one last thing to put a bow on this. Did you see anything from Gabriel on Saturday that makes you feel better or worse about Oklahoma's offense going into this fall?
I feel about the same. I mean, okay. I wouldn't say it's worse or better. He's kind of about, level there. It is interesting to know that his plan is to play 1 year and go pro. I just don't know that there's going to be enough jump in his game to really warrant much more than maybe like a third, fourth round pick necessarily. And maybe that's
Yeah.
good enough for him. But I also wonder what that means from a transfer portal perspective, because some other guys may look at him and go, yeah, he's not leaving after this year. Why would I come in with the expectation of playing in 2023? Shout out to Stoops Bros. He noticed that Jeff Lebby's following Emory Jones now, the transfer from Florida. I don't think he's great or anything, but I think he's looking for playing time. And I think that's going to be the case with pretty much everyone in the portal. So I just don't know what you're going to get. It feels like at best, you're probably getting another Micah Bowens type.
It's exactly what you're getting.
And I think that's all you can expect to get. But
unless you can make the sell that Dylan's gone after this year.
I just don't see that.
I don't know how you do that.
But you've definitely got to go into the transfer portal and bring somebody in, because you're one snap away, and we all saw it on Saturday. I mean, Ralph Rucker, Ben Harris, Micah Bowens, Nick Evers. It's a pretty significant drop off going from Gabriel to those four. So,
and Gabriel does have an injury history. So
yes, 100%.
That makes me nervous.
Yeah. As far as running back positions go, I've got kind of a hot take here. I think you guys are going to roll your eyes at me. I think
pretty normal.
I'm going to go ahead and say Javonte Barnes is the best running back on this team.
Can't say that when Marcus Major was injured.
Yeah, you didn't even see, and Eric Gray barely did anything. He had a couple possessions.
He had a couple possessions, but I guess let me clarify this. I'll say Eric Gray is the starter against UTEP. Javonte Barnes starts by Texas.
I think Javonte Barnes reminded me a lot of Trey Sermon in the style that he ran with. He's probably not going to run away from you, but he'll run through you a lot, run through a ton of arm tackles, and just run with a lot of anger. I could see him having that type of production level. It may not be that he ever starts, just because coaches tend to say, hey, let's give the senior, the upperclassmen guys that starting designation, but he may be the finisher.
Yeah. Corbin, what stuck out to you from the running back position? Mr. Walker?
Yeah, it has to be, right? Now,
fool's
again, I think it's fool's gold. But we'll say, I think according to our Twitter poll, he was the number one most impressive guy that people saw on Saturday, and rightfully so. But I think part of that is always going to be someone you don't expect having a big day is always going to jump off the page, right? Mm-hmm. Dylan Gabriel had a good day, but we kind of knew all about him, and I think there was more focus on him. So when someone's coming off the radar a bit, I think that's pretty natural just for a fan base. But yeah, Eric Gray still remains a question. I think he can be incredibly explosive in this offense, but where? I mean, at some point, do you see multiple running backs and he spends a little bit more time in the slot, especially knowing, potentially a little bit thin on the receiver position. So he continues to be a question mark, but you saw there in the big long run, like he's got potential to break things open, but he hasn't yet in his time in Norman. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Well, if there's one thing that we know about Levy's offense, and just going back to last year at Ole Miss, they want to run the ball 60 to 65% of the time. I'm not sure if from a size and frame standpoint, I don't know if Eric Gray can handle 20, 25 carries in between the tackles, on a week in, week out basis. So I know that they will be creative utilizing his skill set. He is a superior athlete. Being able to get him out in space, one-on-one against a defender is going to be key. But that's why I think, guys like Marcus Major and Javonte Barnes, two guys that are, maybe have, 10, 15, 20 more pounds on them. And they can kind of, hold up to, playing in between the tackles, taking a little bit more punishment, on a play-by-play basis. But guys, wide receiver is a position I do want to touch on these four right here. Marvin Mims, I mean, what more can you say at this point? The guy's a stud. He's going to put
one thing, Tyler, that may be interesting. Sorry, going back to running back real fast. Looking over Ole Miss's stats from last year, 3 running backs with over 100 carries, and all 3 of those over 500 yards. So
spread the wealth.
Yes, and so I don't think Eric Gray has to carry that sort of weight to have that beating when it's clear that Levy's going to emphasize multiple backs, keep the legs fresh throughout the season.
Mm-hmm. And I think that is going to be interesting to monitor as well when you talk about the pace and the tempo in which this offense is going to play. We're going to get so many plays off in this game, especially if this offense is clicking. You're going to see, kind of back up there to what we saw from the 2008 Oklahoma team led by Sam Bradford and, offensive coordinator Josh Heupel, where these teams are going to be running close to 100 plays, game in and game out. So being able to have 3 different ball carriers, spread the wealth out there, spread out some of those carries, that's going to keep those backs fresh all season long. wide receiver and tight ends, guys. I think Marvin Mims, like I said, he's a stud. I think that in this offensive system under Jeff Lebby, he's going to put up big numbers as long as Dylan Gabriel stays healthy. We all know what we're going to get from Drake Stoops. He's going to be Mr. Third Down, kind of the guy who's going to do a lot of the dirty work, both in run blocking and catching the football over the middle. I was hoping to see a little bit more from Jalil Farouk in this game. Nothing really wowed me on Saturday, but he did make a couple of nice competitive catches. And then, guys, probably the most encouraging sign for me at the wide receiver position on Saturday was seeing Theo Weiss. When the play broke down, Dylan Gabriel scrambled left outside of the pocket. Theo was able to get open, make a play that led to the 1-yard touchdown. So I think you've got a clear top 4 in that room right now that Gundy's coaching. But I think that depth, and we'll talk about it here in just a second. Obviously, we've lost one wide receiver to the transfer portal already this week. I think that depth at the wide receiver position is a major area of concern, and that's one that Venables, hopefully they can get that addressed with the transfer portal being a viable option now.
I'm not buying the Jaden Gibson hype just yet. I'm excited about him. I think he will be good at some point, but this year I'm not quite there yet. The one catch that he did have, I guess he had a couple, but the one that everyone remembers where he went 95 yards, poor Dorian Plumlee, a guy that you will never hear his name ever again. The dude is a walk-on from El Reno. That's awesome. Like making it out of El Reno football to OU, an accomplishment of itself, but clearly not the same type of athlete that Jane Gibson is. So he got burned pretty good. Micah Bowens made a great pass. And I think Gibson will have some, catches this year. I just don't think he's going to be, that depth piece that makes you feel real confident going forward. Because outside of those 4 guys that you mentioned, you got a real mixed bag. Cody Jackson, a guy that I was going to put on my portal watch. He beat me to the portal before I can even notate him there. He actually led the red team in targets. I don't even remember any of those. That's how forgettable he was. So I just don't know where the depth is going to come from.
I will say one thing that stuck out off the page to me about Jaden Gibson was his Twitter comment after the game. And this is something that I think is a great sign from where this program is a young wide receiver saying, hey, hand up. I was a bit nervous. That was a lot of freaking people I just played in front of. And that first half showed that it messed with me for a bit. I actually really appreciated that. And I think I'm more confident in him after that tweet than I was probably watching what he put onto the field. Because from the start, I mean, he had a pass hit him right in the hands. Granted, going back to Dylan Gabriel, take a little bit off. But it's like, that was like he had for as much as the great, long pass was there, a kid had a rough first half, but I really do appreciate a kid coming up young, raising his hand saying, wasn't my best, I'll be better. And that I think is a great statement to where the program's headed.
And I think, that's a sign of maturity. And I also think that one of the biggest takeaways you can do from that is, he struggled. He dropped a couple of balls in the first half, but then having the opportunity to come back and have a 95-yard touchdown, that can kind of calm your nerves a little bit. And I think more than anything, that should give him confidence going into the offseason more than anything. If he doesn't make that play, he probably comes out of that game, scratching his head a little bit. Confidence is down, nerves are still going to be there, but I'm not sure how much we'll see him in the rotation, but I definitely think that with his size and stature, he's a red zone threat. Once you get down there inside the 10-yard line, there's not too many cornerbacks in college football, especially in the Big 12, that can, out jump or out athleticize a 6'5", wide receiver. So I think that we'll see some good things from Jaden Gibson this fall. Offensive line.
Well, hold on. We got to talk tight ends here. We just skipped right over those.
Talk about him.
That's kind of the interesting aspect of that, because Daniel Parker was one of the guys that I wanted to watch coming into the game, and he was split out way more than I expected. He was targeted way more than I expected. I thought he would be more like a Brody Eldridge or Bubba Moses type that might just be a blocking situation, but Braden Willis, both those guys were thrown way out wide in a lot of scenarios for some quick passes. So that'll be interesting. We'll see if maybe that can kind of provide some of that depth, because they're going to be used a lot like wide receivers in that sense, but also the blocking presence that they provide on those quick screens is going to be key, because that's an extension of your running game. So I thought that was pretty interesting to see how that worked out for the Lebby offense.
I think Daniel Parker caught the first pass on Saturday, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so, yeah.
He took that little 5-yard bubble route. But no, I think that Parker, he might be a little bit more involved in the passing game. I think that was definitely encouraging to see, because now you can kind of, I think it's, it's not a well-kept secret that his strength as a tight end is his blocking ability from his time at Missouri. We've seen the highlights. So if he's able to catch the football and be a little bit more involved in the passing game. I think that gives Jeff Lebby a lot more, things that he can do where you're not having to pull him off the field anytime you want to try to throw the football. So, I think the Braden Willis, you kind of know what you're going to get from him. I hope that he can, take another step forward going into his final season in Oklahoma. And then Jace Llewellyn, I know that he's a guy that a lot of people around here have been thinking, is he too big to be a tight end? Are we going to have to bulk him up another 30 pounds and put him outside at tackle? I think that as a true freshman, 18 years old, should still be in high school as well. I thought he did some really, really good things, especially in pass protection and in run blocking. So usually a true freshman that's playing on the line of scrimmage, that can be a little challenging at first when you're going up against some of those big boys. But I thought he held his own really well. And and Caden Helms, didn't see too much out of him, but I definitely think that he's one where the offseason is where he's going to have his biggest opportunity to make some gains in the weight room with Schmitty. And we'll see if he can't get on the field a little bit next fall as well.
Guys, transitioning to offensive line. Not sure about you all. Some good,
Yes.
some bad. It was a nice mixed bag of not really sure what to expect from that group moving forward, but I think there was more good than I expected to see on Saturday.
Definitely had the lowest bar for that position group out of anybody, just because everyone was split up. But I think the one thing that stood out to me was Tyler Guyton. He was a dude that, at least body-wise, he looked a lot better than I expected. Now he's got some things to work on. He needs to have better strength. He needs to have quicker feet. He's got to be able to use that leverage better. He's 6'7". The low man usually wins in most of those situations, so he's got to be able to just have better technique. But the fact that he was out there playing left tackle, which is slightly less of importance when you have left-handed quarterback, but I thought that was pretty encouraging to see him out there, in what was a starting role for him. I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, being at the game or being at the stadium on Saturday, then going back and watching some of the TV broadcasts, I think that Dusty Dvorak did a really good job kind of breaking some of that down. It was tough to evaluate the offensive line group because, like you said, Adam, the teams were split. On the wide side, you did have Savion Byrd, Robert Conjo, McKay Matauer, Anton Harrison. Andrew Rame did not play, so didn't get a chance to see him up close. But then also on the other side, you had Murray, Guyton, Wanye Morris. So I think that coming out of this game, watching those guys one-on-one, you could see a difference maybe in the size and the frame of guys like Wanye Morris and Anton Harrison. We said 3 months ago, if there was one position group that could benefit the most, especially early on with Jerry Schmidt coming back, becoming the new strength and conditioning coach at Oklahoma, it's the offensive line. So I really liked what I saw from this group, especially like you said, Adam, a guy like Tyler Guyton, the TCU transfer. I can't believe I'm about to say this, but he might have been OU's best tackle on Saturday. So tackle was a position going into this season, even though it was a spring game, I'm still going to have my concerns about. But when you look at Wanye Morris, Anton Harrison, Tyler Guyton, 3 guys for 2 spots, that's pretty good depth, I think. Then that's something that Bill Bedenbaugh and Jerry Schmidt going into this offseason, they can continue to build on those guys. And I think it's going to be very similar on the interior. You're going to have 4 or 5 guys competing for 2 guards and 1 center spot. There is some good depth with some really good potential. But then, like you said, Corbin, there were also some not very good moments on Saturday as well, where we saw some of the newcomers still continue to struggle going into their second and third years on campus.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that might help this team the most, or this offensive line the most, is just the pace and the fact that most defenses are not going to be used to that. So I still feel good about this. I like that we have a new system in there to help Bedenbaugh's group out a little bit here. So I'm not really all that concerned, just because, like I said, the bar was so low coming into this game.